So we're diving straight back into another Strictly Numbers with another massive head-to-head, and this time we're taking a look at irons. Now, it's not specifically brand involved here. I mean, obviously I am using Callaway, but really we're looking at the players' distance category. And for this video, we're going to be using the standard Apex, so the Apex 21. And then we're going to be putting that up against a standard player's cavity back, so in the TCB, the Callaway TCB. So, you know, these are two very different iron categories for two very different players. So we're going to be taking a little bit of a look at the kind of tech, but then really what we're going to be looking at, as always in Strictly Numbers, is that data. So the format is the same as always, and you should know that by now. And if you don't, then go back and watch some of our other videos. 20 shots with each, and then I'm going to take out the 10 worst shots to kind of really tighten in that data set to give you a good, accurate representation of how these clubs perform head to head. And actually what I'm going to do as well, because we get a lot of people kind of asking about slower swing speeds, I'm going to hit it with my standard swing, which would be somewhere around low 90s with a 7-iron. And then I'm going to try to swing about 80 mile an hour as well, which would be kind of more of an average kind of 7-iron swing speed, to give you the differences in how it would be with a 90+ mile an hour swing speed and then an 80 mile an hour swing speed as well. Okay, so first up we're jumping into the Apex 21. Now this for me is right in that player's distance category, sort of 30.5 degrees of static loft, so definitely in that stronger loft category. I mean, it obviously says forged on the hosel here. Now it is a forged outer body construction, it's not like a fully forged kind of blade or anything like that from one single block of metal. It's a forged body, and then we've got the flash cup face, so the artificial intelligence. Now they've been talking about this in their woods for a little while, to kind of increase ball speeds, increase forgiveness. They're now talking about spin robustness, so kind of like trying to keep that spin consistent across the face on miss hits, which we know isn't really possible to a certain extent, but they're trying to do a good job with that. They're talking about this energy tungsten core, so got 3 big chunks of tungsten dragged down into the sole of this club to obviously try and offset the fact it's stronger in loft, dragging that sort of CG low and far back to kind of increase the launch, obviously try and increase ball speed, increase forgiveness, all these kind of ideas with the Apex 21 iron. So for me, yeah, definitely in that player's distance category. Oh, it's a mouthful, isn't it? So yeah, let's get stuck in and start hitting a few of this. Okay, so 186 to the green. I'm going to leave the green at the same distance, even when I jump to the TCB, so we can kind of see the drop off that we're going to get from this. So, right, let's get stuck in. I'll show you the first one. Put the pressure on. I'll probably only hit about, I don't know, 5 or 6 warm-ups maybe. So let's see how this goes. That was absolutely awful. Absolutely dreadful. I'll take it, I'm putting. It's a good miss. It's a little bit skinny there, a bit skinny. That's a little bit better. There's a little pulley. Catch some of that green. Go on. Yeah, there we go. Take that. Is that 12 foot for birdie? All day long we'll be taking that and then missing that birdie putt all day long. 13 feet 8 to the hole on that one. Take that one. No, I mean, to be honest, it doesn't really look that bad behind the ball at all, this club. It's obviously a little bit chunky depending on, you know, your preference, but, you know, for me it actually looks quite nice. A little bit of offset there, but not too much. I mean, it looks fine, to be honest. Feel-wise, I think it feels really good. You know, it's kind of maybe a touch, I want to say clacky, but got a little bit of a click to it. Not quite a T200 click, but maybe a little bit, but still feels really, really solid when you hit it. Feels nice, powerful, as you'd expect for an iron like this. Again, you get shots like that, which weren't that great, to be honest with you. Tap in, we'll take it. Did not really strike at any of these that well, but So I mean, with an iron like this, you just get away with it. I mean, all of them have been fine. Right, so that's 20 done with the Apex 21. Well, actually, I think it was 23 shots I hit. Having fun, got to be carried away. Now jumping into the TCB. So Callaway's Tour Cavity Back. Now, first of all, we're actually, of course, using the exact same shaft as I had in the Apex, the Dynamic Gold 120X100. That's straight in here, so that's the same. Now, the TCB, obviously, they're calling this their kind of tour-inspired cavity back for elite golfers. So this is just a forged cavity back. Way smaller head, way more traditional loft, 34 degree 7 iron. You know, we're not talking tungsten energy core or AI cup face or any of that kind of stuff really. You've got the interchangeable weight at the back, but apart from that, it's pretty much a player's cavity back really. Super soft feel, 1025 forged, kind of just for the utmost consistency. When you strike it well, the results will be the same. So let's jump in, see what results this gives me. I mean, yeah, straight away looking down at it, you can see it's a much more compact head, less offset, sits really nice. Not a super skinny top line, just looks compact, sits lovely, and yeah, just exactly what you want a player's cavity back iron to look like really. Looks very nice. So we've still got the pin out there at 186 from the last club. So let's see if we can get it anywhere near to that. It's interesting because it's very similar to the very first one I hit with the Apex. I was a bit skinny. Yeah, 162 carry. Not great, not great. So it'll actually be very interesting to look at the standard deviations for both these clubs without me deleting any shots. Because there's multiple ways of looking at it, I suppose. Well, on miss hits, you would expect the bigger Apex to be more forgiving, therefore potentially get less drop off. However, this head you would expect to react more consistently for a better player. I mean, I'm a reasonable player, definitely not elite or tour level by any means, but decent ball striker. So, I mean, through 20 shots, am I going to see more drop-off with this, more drop-off with the Apex? Which one's going to be more consistent? I mean, it'd be interesting. Also, ball-wise, I'm using the Callaway Chrome Soft XLS. No particular reason, other than I just had one here, really. It's a much better strike, that. You can just see the ball flight difference. I mean, that one to me, I did feel like I kind of got a little bit underneath it, delivered maybe a little bit more loft than I would like, so it did pop up, but the flight, I mean, even on here, you can see a big difference. I mean, that one with the Apex was flying the green. And I mean, I'm bounding down there to pin high, so it's not terrible, but yeah, that slight pulled one with the Apex for the most part was landing pin high or flying the green for sure. I mean, the flight difference is just absolutely insane. I'm still launching high. I mean, this being a tour cavity back, obviously 34 degrees in loft. And a lot of people that I see coming in don't actually take that much loft off clubs. Generally, sort of higher handicap delivery tends to be more shallow and kind of deliver almost similar to the club. So it's 34 degrees. There I delivered about 28 degrees. And it's still, so we're taking off 6 degrees of loft at impact, which isn't bad. Might want to take off a little bit more for me personally, but, and that launched at like 20.5. Which is way too high. This will be an interesting one to see because that was definitely a pull. Yeah. Again, that one with the Apex 21 was just hurling the green. I think feel-wise, I mean, it definitely is, I don't even know if I want to say more solid than the Apex 21, because that obviously felt solid, but that was like a clackier solid, whereas this is like a duller solid. I don't even know if that makes any sense whatsoever, but this, yeah, this does feel more one piece, whereas the Apex didn't quite feel one solid piece. Little pulley, catch a bit of green. It's flush though. Right, so it's just over 20 done with each, with my own just normal gaming swing. I am going to do the 80-mile-an-hour swings as well. I'm not going to show you any of those, but I will pop it into the data at the end of the test. Okay, it's time to jump into some of this data. So this first one is my normal swing, Apex against the TCB. No shots deleted whatsoever. So if we jump straight in, I mean, the first thing to note is probably dispersion, which, to be honest with you, with such a small data set, so many few swings, I made a few bad swings, that happens, it's golf, right? But the dispersion was much tighter left to right with the TCB than it was with the Apex. Front to back's probably similar, to be honest with you, but left to right definitely tighter with the TCB, which we like. Jumping into the numbers, ball speed, Apex 125, TCB 123. I mean, considering the loft gap there's nearly 4 degrees, and with all the tech that the Apex has got involved in it, I would probably expect to see a little bit more than that, being honest with you. But there you go, it's a small data set. Like I said, I'm the biggest variable, so when we take the bad ones out, we might see more of a separation there possibly, but yeah, I would maybe want to see a little bit more of a difference there. Launch 17, 18. So again, for the loft gap, I mean the Apex is closing that launch gap down a little bit. So I mean, with a roughly 4-degree loft gap, I mean, if I hit the 6-iron in the TCB, which is somewhat similar to the 7-iron in the Apex, I would probably expect there to be 2.5 degrees of launch difference in there. So it is doing a good job of launching reasonably high for its loft. So then jumping into backspin, we've got 56 with the Apex 21 and then 65 with the TCB. Obviously, you know, 900 revs of difference there, which is going to be with A, the loft, and B, the head designs of these. Generally, when you stick loads of kind of mass low, which is going to increase the launch, it kind of drags the spin down at the same time as well, because you're not getting the same gear effect from the head, which again is a little bit techie, but yeah, it's kind of what I'd expect. But again, for me, I'll have a little look at peak heights. Height for me is never an issue, because I've got plenty of ball speed to keep it climbing long enough, so the angle of descent would be pretty steep on both. So obviously going to be steeper on the TCB, but anyway, yeah, so a 900 revs of spin difference there. I mean, the rest, to be honest, so what we got, so essentially an 8-yard carry difference there, which again, there's 3.5 degrees, so almost 4 degrees, which I would class as a club. So again, considering the Apex is meant to have all this technology, to be honest, I would probably expect there to be more like a club and a half. But again, we might see that kind of separation when I take some of the bad shots out. But touching on kind of standard deviations there, we can actually see that they're exactly the same on both. So it's not like it was tighter with the TCB or bigger with the Apex. They were both identical. The spin standard deviation was a little bit tighter on the TCB, which you probably would expect, to be honest. A little bit, I mean, there's only 100 revs in it, to be honest. The others were, yeah, not really too much in it. So, yeah, standard deviation, to be honest, there really isn't that much in it, to be fair. Having a very quick look at club data before I clean up this data. So swing speed, I did swing the TCB a little bit faster. I don't think that has really got to do with anything. I think I was maybe just a fraction warmer, to be honest. The efficiency, obviously, is a big jump in efficiency with the Apex, kind of getting more ball speed out of less club speed, which again, loft mostly, to be honest. A lot of that tech is helping a bit, but mostly loft, to be completely honest with you. Dynamic loft, 26 to 23, so 3 degrees when there's, what, 3.5 degrees different static loft, so delivered them fairly similar, to be honest. Dynamic lie, again, really, there's not much there. There's a little bit more toe, a little bit more toe down, but it's 0.5 degree. It's not really too much to dive into there. Face angle, identical. Path, identical. Attack, identical. So path, attack, very consistent, to be honest. I'm quite pleased with my delivery there. Even the loft difference pretty much stacks up against what we would want to see static versus static, if that makes sense. So, yeah, pretty consistent. Okay, so we're jumping straight back into the data. This is my normal swing with the Apex and TCB, obviously. Now this is whittled down from, I think I hit about 23 with each, whittled down to the best 10. So you actually see the ball speed widened slightly, but still not that much, to be fair. 123 versus 126. So I mean, that's, yeah, it's still, maybe would expect a little bit more from the Apex, to be honest. But launch, we see that widen now a little bit more, so almost 2 degrees of launch difference, which again at a 4-degree loft gap, kind of would expect normally. So again, maybe the Apex not launching that much higher for its loft, considering what it's trying to do with the tech and such. 17.6 versus 19.4, we see the spin gap widen from 55 to 67, so 1200 backspin, so there's a lot of backspin difference there. And then we still see kind of one club really in difference in carry, 171 to 181. So essentially doing exactly what you would expect it to do for the loft, really, no different, to be honest with you. Yeah, a little bit more launch, way more spin. Yeah, it's doing kind of what I'd expect it to do. There you go. Back into club data, but not that we're going to see much different. I wouldn't have thought. Efficiency, TCB popped up a little bit. Swing speed still about a mile an hour in it. Not too much going on there really. Dynamic loft now widened slightly to that kind of 4 degrees. So again, 3.5 static. So it's pretty damn good, to be honest with you. Face angle 0.3, path 0.5, attack still the same, average strike still the same. I mean, delivery wise, they're right where they should be given the static loft of the clubs, considering we're using the same shaft. So yeah, there's nothing crazy going on there, to be honest. So yeah, now I'm going to add in the 80 mile an hour swing speed one, because that could be very interesting for a lot of you. Okay, so this is the 80 mile an hour swing speed. I've already kind of deleted any bad ones. I didn't maybe hit quite as many possibly with this data set as with my normal swing, but here we start to see a little bit more ball speed separation, 109 to 105, so that's a decent little jump there. Launch, again, very similar in that 2 degrees, which, again, maybe the Apex should possibly do a little bit of a better job of launching, considering what it's trying to achieve and considering the loft. But there you go, 20 versus 18, 61.55, so again, lower swing speed. It's actually very interesting that with the Apex, the spin pretty much stayed the same, really. I mean, the launch conditions, I can't actually remember what were mine. I literally just did them, but I'll check. I don't think they were that dissimilar to that, to be honest with you. No, it must have been 17 and 55. So it's actually pretty damn impressive, still retaining spin. That's actually something that I see with that head. It actually spins pretty well. You know, it spins generally more than like P790, something like that, in that sort of range, which is great. So spin 55, 61, and again we see pretty much a similar sort of thing, really. I mean, a club carry difference. So if anything, I mean, the ball speed gap similar, maybe widens a touch. The spin gap definitely shrinks because of less speed. The launch difference stays the same, but actually kind of the launch angles were not too dissimilar. And yeah, still the same sort of carry distance. Now, one of the biggest differences between swinging at my speed and swinging at this speed would be peak height and angle of descent. You can see at this graphic here, kind of how much flatter that the Apex is going to be coming in when compared to the TCB. So I'm going to look at club data quickly, but then we are going to look at peak height and angle of descent on this one. So considering I was swinging at kind of not half pace, but that felt very slow for me. I'm quite impressed with that, to be honest. So swing speed within half a mile an hour. The efficiency, again, really that's kind of a similar difference that we saw with my normal swing. Dynamic loft, again, it's kind of 25 to 28, so 3.5 degrees in it. Again, exactly the same as the static difference between those clubs. Dynamic lie, again, it's 0.6 in it, not too much there. Face angle, yeah, maybe a degree to be fair, but again, it really is not much there, is it? Path, again, half a degree. Attack, half a degree. It's half a degree, really, in between every variable there. So, and swing speed, half a mile an hour. So I'm actually pretty pleased with that. Now, if you've actually made it this far in the video, then thanks. So this is my problem with people requesting swing speed comparisons. So swing speed is probably, I wouldn't say the least important variable when it comes to looking at a delivery, but it's not one of the most important. For me, if you were swinging at 80 mile an hour, I was hitting, what, 6 down, and you know, the Apex is 30.5, so I'm hitting 6 down and taking off kind of just over 5 degrees of loft. Similar with the TCB, I'm hitting 6 down and taking off 6 degrees of loft. Now that really is the biggest variable, because a lot of people that I was seeing there would be 0, 1, 2 down, not taking off much loft. It's very similar when we start to look at drivers. Like, yeah, swing speed matters, but when we're talking like launch and spin and peak heights and angle of descents and all those kind of things, we need to know what's your attack angle, what's your delivered loft, what's your face to path relation. All these kind of things are probably more important, or at least as important. So this is why if you swing at 80 mile an hour, you can't really take that this is how it's going to perform for you, because your delivery might be completely different to mine. So that's my bit on swing speed anyway. So yeah, there you go. So actually, peak height and angle of descent. Right, see if I can bring that up on here. Okay, so that information isn't in the comparison, but bringing up the table, obviously we can see the bottom of the TCBs here, so the average along this column here, and then these are obviously all the Apex shots with the average along the bottom here. Now obviously the two that we're really interested in, peak height and angle of descent. So peak height, actually very similar, 83 feet with the TCB and 81 feet with the Apex. However, because of that spin difference and the launch difference, of course, the angle of descent we've got with the Apex 43, just over, and with the TCB 45. Now this is always kind of a balancing act, a juggling act when it comes to fitting lower swing speed players, and a lot of it is going to depend on handicap and ball striking ability. Now obviously looking at that, we'd love the 45 descent angle from the 7-iron. However, you do get an extra 10 yards with the Apex, which might help most kind of higher handicap amateurs that are coming up short a lot. So although we might not have the land angle, a lot of people are going to come up short anyway. So is that extra 10 yards going to actually give them a better scoring average than having more angle of descent into the greens? Quite possibly. However, if they're a much better ball striker and they're kind of much more consistent and they know their yardages and they need that land angle coming into the greens, then TCB is going to be far better off. But I mean, there's always different things that we can do in the fitting. If I just want to get that spin up, I mean, I was using the Chrome Soft X LS, so the low spin model there. If we really wanted to go with the forgiveness and the distance of the Apex, but we just wanted a little bit more spin, kind of create that little bit more climb, that little bit more descent, we could look at using, you know, Pro V1X, Chrome Soft X, kind of the Mizuno balls, the Tour RBX, I think it is. The Mizuno balls are mad spinny, like so spinny. So that's all that kind of stuff we would look at during fittings as well to try and change those variables. But for me, if you've got a 7-iron coming in at 43, then what's your 6-iron, 5-iron, and 4-iron going to do? I mean, at that rate, looking at those numbers, I'd definitely be saying don't go for a 4-iron. I'd say probably 5-iron's borderline. Maybe look at a hybrid instead of a 5-iron as well. It would depend on the player again. But all the things we need to try and weigh up in a fitting in order to try and get you to score better, ultimately. So yeah, so much for strictly numbers, right? Just, I can't help myself, can I? Diving in all the time. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that video. I hope you got something out of it. Seeing the difference between those two heads, I just thought it would be very interesting from two swing speed perspectives. As always, stay tuned. Much more to come. Let me know what you want to see. And I'll see you next time.